What's up, Kryptonians? Sorry, this video was actually supposed to come out a few days ago on Thursday. I have other videos that got pushed down the queue. We're gonna get to that a little bit later. We are technically about a week and a couple of days removed from the finale of My Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, which is the new animated Spider-Man series that popped up on Disney+. I'm not gonna spoil everything, but there will be some mild spoilers throughout the video. Not major stuff. Like, I'm gonna be pretty vague about most of the things that I talk about in relation to the show because I know that not everybody has had a chance to watch the show. But if I happen to mention like, oh shit, like Daredevil showed up in an episode in this series and he looked pretty good, like just as an example, that would be considered like a mild spoiler because I don't know how many of you actually know that Daredevil shows up in the show, which, wow, okay, that's not an example anymore. That's an actual thing that happened in the show. But regardless, we're here to talk about Spider-Man. So I'm assuming if you are still here with me in this video, you don't care about spoilers, or you've seen the show and you're ready for me to talk about it. But for starters, the setup for the show is kind of interesting because it's kind of like an MCU version of Spider-Man, except not really. The show takes place on like an alternate reality or alternate universe or parallel Earth or however you want to describe it. And it's really more MCU adjacent than anything. Like, it has a lot of the same events and structure like that the MCU has, but it's definitely a different story. It definitely is following different characters, a different Spider-Man, a different universe. It just has some similarities with the MCU that you know. One of the big changes is in the MCU, obviously Peter's mentor when he became Spider-Man was Tony Stark. In this universe, his mentor is Norman Osborn. So there's interesting stuff at play there for obvious reasons for anybody that knows anything about Norman Osborn. I do want to kind of start off talking about the voice talent. The voice talent overall was pretty good for this series. Coleman Domingo as Norman Osborn, I have absolutely no issues with. I mean, he was amazing. Coleman Domingo is amazing. He brought a lot of gravitas and a lot of menace to that voice, even when he wasn't trying to be. Hudson Thames is the one who voices Peter, and I'll be honest, his voice was kind of annoying at first. I had to kind of learn to live with it. It's not that his voice is bad or whatever. His voice just feels a little bit too nasally, a little bit too whiny for what I would want from a Peter Parker interpretation. As usual, a voice like that, it shines probably a little bit better when he's Spider-Man than it does when he's Peter, but overall, Hudson did okay, all things considering. It's just not my cup of tea in terms of the voice. You got Grace Song as Nico, you got Eugene Bird as Lonnie Lincoln. I mean, very solid performances all throughout. I'll also have to say the animation for this series is something that I kind of had to warm up to it because I was not feeling the animation at first. There are aspects of the animation that look pretty good, like it's vibrant, it's colorful, and it does look like comic book pages that have been splashed on screen at different points. Like, pick a comic, pick a graphic novel, there are gonna be some scenes that look like they were shot right out of that book. But then there are some parts of the animation that feel very, very stilted and feel very static. There are some parts that feel not as fluid and very stiff, and sometimes when you look at the foreground and the background of certain scenes, there's certain things where you're sitting there watching, you're like, why is it that nobody in the background is moving? It's a little thing, but in animation, the details matter. Again, that's not to say the animation's ugly, it's just not my cup of tea, but overall, you learn to live with it the longer the season goes on. I will say, since we're talking about comic books and we're talking about graphic novels, I love the way that they turn every title card for the episode into a comic book cover. If you're a longtime Spider-Man fan, there are going to be so many comic book covers that you remember from reading the comics, and then you're going to watch the show, and then the title card's going to pop up, and you're going to be like, oh shit, yeah, that reminds me of a comic that I've read. And the way they're able to change them throughout the season and the way that it reflects the evolution of Peter throughout the season, I thought that was actually pretty cool, pretty clever. If I had one way to describe the show beyond the animation and the voice talent and the title cards, it would be, it feels like a slightly better version of the MCU Spider-Man. This is not gonna turn into one of those I hate the MCU Spider-Man videos. I actually like MCU Spider-Man. I like Tom Holland. I think his Spider-Man has a lot of potential. I also have a lot of inherent issues that keep me from fully putting my arms around his Spider-Man. And while this Spider-Man feels similar in a lot of ways, there are some key differences here that I do appreciate that I actually am like, I wonder why the MCU didn't take this approach. One of the things that I appreciate is that this series does treat Uncle Ben like he matters. They treat him like he's an important figure in Peter's life and in Aunt May's life. They don't just kind of skip over it and ignore it and act like Uncle Ben is nothing. I don't like interpretations of Spider-Man where Uncle Ben is ignored. That doesn't mean I want to see Uncle Ben's origin all the time, and it doesn't mean that it needs to be copy-paste. I'm just saying he should be at the very least important, even in passing, even if you're just going to reference him. Being that this is MCU adjacent and you are going to have a Spider-Man show that takes place in a world similar similar to the MCU. There's gonna be tons of references, Easter eggs, and there are a few cameos that pop here in and out of the season. I already mentioned the Daredevil one. Charlie Cox back to voice Daredevil. God, he's like the perfect Daredevil. I want him to play Daredevil until he's 90. That's what Deadpool would want too. But I love seeing him show up and tangle with Spider-Man a little bit. I also love Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange shows up a couple of times here. There's an Iron Man cameo. There's a ton of other references that if you're a fan, whether you're a fan of the MCU or a fan of the comics or both, you're gonna catch up on them and you're gonna like pick up on that and appreciate it. I also love that this show, being that it's telling a story that is going to evolve these characters as we go along. I love the fact that we meet a lot of the characters in the early stages. It's not just about Peter and him like becoming Spider-Man and then learning how to become Spider-Man, job getting increasingly difficult and him getting better at it as time goes on. But for example, I love what the show does with Lonnie Lincoln. Anybody that knows who Lonnie Lincoln is in the source material knows what's gonna happen to him. But similar to what they did with the PS4 or PS5 Spider-Man, where they make you care about Otto Octavius before he gets torn down and turned into, you know, Dr. Octopus. I like the way that they develop Lonnie, and I like the character dynamics that pop up between him and Peter, him and Nico, him and his girlfriend that he kind of neglects for the second half of the show, but still, all of that stuff really adds to the depth of Lonnie Lincoln, and it really makes you not want to see what's going to happen to him. Show will probably dive into this in season 2, and if you saw the end of season 1, you kind of already know where they're going. There's some great Spider-Man action and great moments littered throughout the season. There's so much passion and love that's put into the show. You could tell that whoever the showrunner is, and I can't remember the showrunner's name, unfortunately, but you could tell that dude is a big Spider-Man fan because there are so many moments, whether it's action related or character related throughout the season. You can tell that this dude loves Spider-Man. He has clearly a passion for the source material, a passion for Spider-Man that really shows in all of the attention to detail that they scatter throughout this season. So I do appreciate the fact that the show feels like it was made with love. Have you watched Thor: Love and Thunder recently? I wouldn't recommend it. It's dog shit, but you can just tell that Taika and the people behind that movie just did not care about making a good movie. You can tell, it's always obvious. With your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, it's obvious that the people, the writers, the animators, people involved with this, they actually give a damn and they're trying to give you a great show. And I thought for the most part, they succeeded. If there is another critique I can throw out at the show though, it is that Peter's personality, like what they go with as his base for the show, is not my favorite Peter personality. He's a little bit too aw shucks, gee whiz, golly gee for me. Like I kind of need my Peter haunted and a mixture of lonely. That's not me saying I want Peter to be an edgelord or anything like that. That's just me saying I don't like the bland vanilla personality that they gave him, although they did show improvement towards the end, towards the finale, that I actually do appreciate. I feel like people are gonna take what I'm saying and they're gonna aggregate it and they're gonna turn me into that guy. I'm not that guy. I'm just saying there are aspects of his personality that I wasn't a huge fan of. And the finale had me feeling mixed about certain things, certain decisions that they make in regards to Peter's origin. But I don't know, it's kind of weird for the show to tell us that Uncle Ben is important, but then not really demonstrate how his importance trickled down and led to Peter becoming who he is. And the way that the finale is constructed, it's like they're asking a certain question about Peter and Spider-Man that I don't know if I like the answer to, and I can't spoil it beyond that, but if people who have watched the show, you'll know what I'm talking about. Guys, in the end, this is actually a pretty kick-ass Spider-Man show. I had a lot of fun with it. I am really looking forward to season 2, season 3. If they're gonna be this good, count me in. As somebody who was obsessed with Spider-Man, but also somebody who was a little bit skeptical about the show before it hit, I gotta say, they mostly delivered on what I wanted, and they went a little bit beyond in some aspects. I would give this show a solid 3.5 out of 5. I think it's pretty damn good. I think there are things they can improve on, obviously. And even if you're not a huge Spider-Man fan, there's plenty of things to enjoy about this one. All right, guys, those are my thoughts on your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Tell me, have you seen the show? What did you think about it? Give me your thoughts on it in the comment section down below. Please like and subscribe to the Superfan Show, and if you like what you see, tell me how you feel, and stay tuned to hear more from the Man of Steel. Peace.